Event 1, Declaration of Independence and Constitution, 1776 to 1789. The American Revolution and the creation of the Constitution established the foundation of U.S. political structure. The Declaration of Independence challenged monarchy and claimed that government exists to protect natural rights. The Constitution created a federal system with checks and balances between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. Political power was officially placed in the hands of the people, but in reality it was mostly limited to white, property-owning men. Impact on today. This event created the framework of American government that still exists today. The ideas of limited government, individual rights, and representative democracy continue to shape U.S. politics. However, it also set up long-lasting exclusions that later generations would have to challenge. Identification. The Declaration of Independence, 1776, announced the colony's break from Britain and stated that people have natural rights. The Constitution, 1787, created the structure of the U.S. government with 3 branches and checks and balances. Significance. These documents formed the foundation of American democracy by defining government power and individual rights. Their ideas later supported movements to expand rights to more Americans. Event 2, the Civil War and Reconstruction Amendments, 1861 to 1870. The Civil War was a turning point that redefined who the Constitution applied to. The war settled the question of whether states could leave the Union, strengthening federal authority. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments ended slavery, defined citizenship, and promised equal protection and voting rights. Despite these changes, enforcement was weak, and power was quickly reclaimed by white elites through segregation and voter suppression. Impact on today. Modern debates about federal power, civil rights, and equal protection all trace back to this period. The Civil War transformed the U.S. from a loose union into a stronger nation-state, but it also left unresolved conflicts about race and political inclusion that still shape American politics. Identification. The Civil War 1861 to 1865 was fought mainly over slavery. The Reconstruction Amendments ended slavery. 13th, granted citizenship and equal protection. 14th, and protected voting rights for black men. 15th. Significance. This period reshaped the nation by ending slavery and redefining citizenship. The amendments became the legal basis for future civil rights efforts. Event 3, the Civil Rights Movement and Voting Rights Act, 1950s-1960s. The Civil Rights Movement forced the United States to finally begin enforcing its constitutional promises. Landmark laws like the Civil Rights Act, 1964, and Voting Rights Act, 1965, expanded political participation. The federal government took a more active role in protecting citizens' rights against state discrimination. Marginalized groups gained greater access to political power, though inequalities remained. Impact on today. This period reshaped American democracy into a more inclusive system and directly influences current debates about voting laws, racial justice, and federal authority. It also helped establish the U.S. as a nation that publicly commits to civil rights, even as it continues to struggle with them. Identification. The civil rights movement of the 1950s-60s sought to end racial discrimination. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 outlawed practices that prevented minorities from voting. Significance. These reforms made American democracy more inclusive by enforcing equal rights and expanding access to voting. Conclusion. Together, these 3 events show that U.S. political structures were not created all at once, but through conflict and reform. The founding era created democratic ideals and institutions. The Civil War redefined citizenship and strengthened federal power. The civil rights movement expanded who could fully participate in democracy. The USA today is powerful and influential, but also contested and imperfect. Its political system is built on ideals of freedom and equality, yet shaped by long struggles over who truly holds power. The American Civil War and Reconstruction. Causes of the Civil War. Sectional tensions between North and South. Expansion of slavery into the West. Southern economy based on slavery. Political battles over slavery. Election of Abraham Lincoln, 1860. Missouri Compromise, 1820. Compromise of 1850. Abraham Lincoln, elected president in 1860, opposed the expansion of slavery. Election triggered the secession crisis. South viewed his election as a threat to their way of life. Secession crisis. 11 Southern states left the Union, 1860 to 1861. South Carolina seceded first, December 20, 1860. Confederate States of America formed. President, Jefferson Davis. Early War. First Battle of Bull Run, July 21, 1861. First major battle of the war. Union expected a quick victory. Confederate victory boosted Southern morale. Civilians from Washington watched the battle. Major turning points. Gettysburg, July 1 to 3, 1863. Largest battle of the Civil War. Gettysburg Address, November 19, 1863. 271 words. Redefined the war as a fight for a new birth of freedom. Honored the dead and inspired the living. First time Union and Confederate soldiers were buried together. Emancipation Proclamation, January 1, 1863, declared enslaved people free in Confederate states, made ending slavery a war goal, prevented European support for the Confederacy, freed about 3.5 million enslaved people, Black Americans in the war. 180,000 plus African Americans served in the Union Army, 20,000 served in the Navy, made up about 10% of Union forces. Famous unit, 54th Massachusetts Infantry, escaped enslaved people weakened the Confederate war effort. Sherman's March to the Sea, Fall 1864, marched from Atlanta to Savannah, Georgia, used total war strategy, destroyed railroads, factories, and plantations, crushed Southern morale and sped up surrender. Fall of Atlanta, September, 1864. Major Union victory, boosted Northern morale, helped Lincoln win re-election, showed the war was nearing its end. End of the war Appomattox, April 9, 1865. General Lee surrendered to General Grant. Grant offered generous terms. Confederate soldiers allowed to return home. Effectively ended the Civil War. Human and economic cost, about 750,000 deaths. Massive destruction of Southern farms and homes. Infrastructure loss. Reconstruction spending. Rise of sharecropping. Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877. Goals and challenges. Rebuild the South. Reintegrate Confederate states. Define rights for formerly enslaved people. Decide who controls Reconstruction. Lincoln's 10% plan. Quick reunification. 10% of voters pledge loyalty. Most Confederates pardoned. States had to accept the end of slavery. Lincoln's assassination. April 14, 1865. Shot by John Wilkes Booth. Booth opposed black rights. Andrew Johnson becomes president. Former vice president, not wealthy, pardoned elite Confederates, declared Union restored in 1866. His policies helped lead to Jim Crow, freed people, 4 million newly freed, focused on reuniting families, thousands placed information wanted ads, many traveled to find relatives, education after slavery. Former slaves demanded education. Northern missionaries and the Freedmen's Bureau helped. Schools formed in churches and community centers. Education symbolized hope. Beginning of HBCUs. Strong dedication to learning. Freedmen's Bureau helped transition from slavery to freedom. Provided food, medical care, and legal assistance. Negotiated labor contracts. Established schools. Helped reunite families. 40 acres and a mule. Promise made to freed people. Most land returned to former Confederates. Massive broken promise. Removed economic starting point for Black Americans. Black codes. Laws passed to control free Black people. Vagrancy laws forced labor contracts. Children could be taken from families. No voting, jury service, or firearm ownership. What did freedom mean for formerly enslaved people? No longer enslaved. Owning property. Forming families freely, paid employment, education, voting rights, later restricted, congressional response, radical Republicans outraged, refused to seat Southern representatives, took control of Reconstruction, Joint Committee on Reconstruction formed, Civil Rights Act of 1866, first federal civil rights law, established birthright citizenship. Federal government protects citizens' rights. Johnson vetoed it. Congress overrode the veto. 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, guaranteed citizenship, equal protection under the law, barred Confederate leaders from office, still in effect today. Radical Reconstruction, began in 1867, South divided into 5 military districts, martial law enforced, states required to ratify the 14th Amendment, black men granted voting rights, Johnson's impeachment, constant conflict with Congress, violated the Tenure of Office Act, impeached in 1868, acquitted by 1 vote, political power weakened, political and social outcomes, 13th, 15th Amendments, end of slavery, rise of Jim Crow laws, grandfather clauses, growth of women's reform movements,